In this video, we're going to be building out a decentralized identity management system as well as single sign-on with Ethereum. I've really been talking about this area a lot because I think it's really exciting and there's a lot of opportunities here, and it's one of the things that I like about Web3, the ideas around self-sovereign identity and being able to control your identity. So how does that look like in practice? And that's kind of what I want to answer in this video. This area has been getting a decent amount of attention lately. There was a really viral Twitter thread not too long ago. I'll link to it in the comments. Also at ETHCC, Vitalik set aside a portion of his talk to talk about this. I myself have been talking about it, and I think it's really core to most applications: identity, authentication, and authorization. So how do you kind of accomplish that? Well, there are a few different ways that you can do that. There's no one approach. In fact, the Ethereum Foundation is currently working on a specification for kind of some ideas around a spec itself. But there are various approaches. Some are more decentralized than others. The approach that I'm going to be taking today, though, is going to be using a combination of a couple of decentralized protocols and networks, as well as some open source libraries. And we're going to be using a Ceramic, IDX, and 3ID Connect. So if you go to the Ceramic network website, you can kind of get a good idea around what it is. But essentially, it's a decentralized network of nodes, and you can basically write and read to these nodes. IDX is an identity protocol, and it integrates with Ceramic. And this kind of gives you, I would say, kind of a identity-focused way to interact with Ceramic, maybe. Also, some APIs and some ideas around things like how to define schemas. So if you want to have a shared identity system between applications, you need to have some shared way to decide which data you're going to be saving and reading for these users. So one of the ones that's popular, and the one that I'm going to be talking about, is the basic profile. And the basic profile basically has characteristics that people can use and share across platforms, and they can control and update themselves. And then 3ID Connect is just an open source library that works with 3ID and Ceramic, and it's actually maintained by Ceramic Studio. So this is what we're going to be using, and we're going to be building out like a front-end application that allows a user to sign in with their Ethereum wallet and manage their identity. And hopefully by the end of this video, you kind of get a good idea around how all this stuff works. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing. So let's go ahead and get started writing some code. And to do that, I'll jump into my terminal, and I'll go ahead and create a new React app. All right, so now that we've created our project, we'll change into this new directory, and we're going to go ahead and install our dependencies. Now, I'm going to go ahead and link to all of this code in the comments. So if you want to just copy and paste, if you're trying to follow along, I'm going to add a gist for this. I'm also going to add a link to a more built-out project called Decentralized Identity that I've built as well. So this might be a lot to kind of follow along. So it might be nice to just copy and paste, but it's up to you. So we're going to go ahead and install 3ID Connect. We're going to be installing the 3ID DID resolver, which is for decentralized identity. I'm sorry, for DIDs, which are kind of like a Web3 spec. I forgot the name of them. I forgot what it stands for. Decentralized identifiers, that's right. Yeah, so DID resolver is basically a resolver that allows us to kind of interact with this API. So we're going to install the 3ID DID resolver. We're going to install the the Ceramic Studio HTTP client. Will allow us to interact with the Ceramic network. We're going to install IDX. We're going to install the DIDS library for decentralized identifiers, and we're going to install ethers.js. Oh, I didn't do yarn add. All right, so while that's installing, I guess we can go ahead and open up our text editor. And I will go ahead and open app.js. And let's go ahead and start writing some code. So the idea here is going to be like when the app loads, we will allow the user to first read their profile and then just show some basic information off of their profile. And then we'll offer them a user input field for them to update their profile. So, you know, if I want to update my name or my profile image, I can just do that. So to do that, we'll go ahead and need to be importing use state from React. I'll go ahead and maybe remove some of this code here. The next thing we're going to now import is Ceramic client from the Ceramic Network HTTP client, and then also the 3ID resolver from Ceramic Network did resolver. We're going to then import the Ethereum auth provider and 3ID connect from 3ID connect, and we're going to import the DID class from DIDs, and we're going to import IDX from Ceramic Studio. And that's really all of the different imports that we need to make all this stuff work. If you want to learn more about each individual library, you know, check them out. But we're going to be using them, and hopefully you'll learn a little bit more about them, like as we write some more code. Next, we want to define the endpoint that is going to be the network node that we want to interact with. Now, you could be running a local node, you can be running a production node, or you could be interacting with a production node. And then there might even be, I believe, in the future, if not already, things like Infura that allow you to use nodes almost as a service that other people are running. And then there's a test network that you can use there right now that I'm going to be using. And this is the one that they recommend as of today in the docs. So ceramicclay.3boxlabs.com. This is going to be the endpoint that I'm going to use. Again, all of this code is in the comments if you want to copy and paste any of that stuff. The next thing that we want to do is when the app loads, we want to go ahead and set some initial state. So the three pieces of state that we're going to be working with are going to be a name. So a user can set their name, it could be their username, whatever. We want to allow them to set their profile image or their avatar. And we also want to have some loading state. So if we fetch some data from the network for the user, the idea is like the first time they fetch their profile, it's not gonna exist. So we want to kind of give them a message to go ahead and set their profile. And then so basically, if we fetch and we get that response, we're going to go ahead and just set loaded, and then we can show some UI state. In order to interact with these different networks and stuff, we basically need to get the user's Ethereum address. And to do that, we can basically connect to the window.ethereum object. So I can now just have a function called connect. This is going to allow us to call this function from any other function, and then it will just return all of the connected addresses. So what we're going to basically look for is when the user uses the app, they're going to try to fetch their profile. And in order to do that, we're going to ask them for their Ethereum wallet address. So here we can call Ethereum window.ethereum.requests, and then we're going to say we want to request accounts. And this will return an array of addresses. And the assumption here is that the first address in this array is going to be the one that we're going to use. So you can either return just that first item, or you can use that zero index in another function, which is kind of what we're going to be doing. So the first function that we want to do is going to be for reading a profile. So we'll create a function called read profile, and then we can go ahead and fetch that user's address by saying const addresses is equal to await connect. So this is going to connect their wallet, and it's going to give us this first address out of their out of the array. The next thing we want to do is we want to create a new instance of Ceramic client and passing in the endpoint. And the endpoint is that endpoint that we created and defined right up there. Next, we're going to go ahead and create a new instance of IDX, and we'll set it in a variable called IDX, and we're going to pass in the Ceramic client that we just created. And now we can actually go ahead and do like a try-catch block where we're going to, try to first interact with the network. And if there's an error, and this might, I believe, throw if there is no profile set yet, if there is no decentralized identifier set for this profile yet. And here we're just going to call set loaded and set that to true, because this is going to be after we read that user's profile. So the way that we want to interact with this user's profile is we don't really need to sign a request here, because this is public. This is a public profile. Anyone can read it. That's the whole idea. All we need is a user's address. So all we have to do is call IDX.get, and here we're going to be passing in the schema as well as the address. So the first argument is going to be the schema, like what is the type of information we want to get. Well, for this user, we just want to get their basic profile. And then for the second argument, we want to pass in the address, but also the network that we're reading from, because you can interact with not only Ethereum, but other networks as well. And let me look real quick to see where this stuff is documented, because it might be interesting for us to kind of see that. So you have Ethereum's mainnet, which is EIP 155, but I'm just looking for the other ones that are there so we can kind of see. Here we go, currently supported blockchains. So Cosmos, Ethereum, Filecoin, EOS, and Polkadot. So you basically need to provide not only the address, but also like which chain that you want to interact with, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. So in order to do that, we can just basically do some combination of the address as well as the network. So it might look something like this, where we do the address at EIP 155:1. And I'm kind of curious again where this was documented, just so people can kind of get more information. Yeah, it's somewhere in their docs. But if you're interested in other networks, definitely check in their docs, but also check the linked project that I have here, because my other project actually supports all of these other networks as well. But the one we're building today is only focused on Ethereum. All right, so this is going to go ahead and fetch that user's data, and if there is data, we'll just go ahead and log it out. And then we're going to look for two properties. We're going to be looking for their name and their avatar. And if that name and that avatar exists, we can go ahead and set them in the local state. So I'll basically say if they have a name, then set the name. And if they have an avatar, then set the image with their avatar. All right, so that is it. That's all we need for reading their profile. Now we might go ahead and have a button that goes ahead and calls this. So let's go ahead and create a function. A button that calls this function. So we might say read profile, and then on click read profile. So let's go ahead and run this. See what happens. See if we have any mistakes. And all this should show really is like a button right now. Or it could break because we did something wrong. Who knows? All right, so read profile. All right, we're connecting to the wallet. And there we go. It says no DID found, because we have never set a decentralized identifier yet for this wallet. So everything's working properly. The next thing we want to do is go ahead and set the function for writing to the profile. So to do that, we might have a function called something like update profile. So I'll create this function, update profile, and here we're going to be interacting again with the ceramic network. So let's see what we use up here. We can probably just copy these two lines of code here, because we still need the address and we need to get an instance of the ceramic client. But now we also want to get an instance of 3ID Connect. And we want to go ahead and create a provider using the Ethereum auth provider. And here, since we've already, verified that they're connected with their Ethereum wallet, we can just pass in window.ethereum as well as their address. And then we can now connect to 3ID by saying await 3ID connect.connect, passing in the provider. All right, so now we should be connected to the 3ID Connect, and we can now go on to the next step and interact with the decentralized identifier. So what we're going to now do here is we're going to say we want to store this variable DID, which is going to be either creating or getting a reference to a decentralized identifier based on the user's address. So this means if they've already created a decentralized identifier, we can just reference that. If they haven't, we're going to go ahead and create a new one and allow that user to create a new decentralized identifier. And then once we have that identifier, we can set that in the Ceramic client by calling ceramic.setDid. And then we can now authenticate that user by calling ceramic.did.authenticate. And at this point, we are now connected and we've authenticated using the user's wallet address. They've signed the transaction, and we can now start doing some cool stuff. So what we want to now do is, now that they've authenticated, we want to go ahead and let them update their profile. So we can go ahead and get a reference to a new instance of IDX, and we have passed in that authenticated Ceramic client. And we can now call IDX.set. And we want to pass in the schema that we want to set. Here we're saying the basic profile. And we're going to pass in an object with the different properties. So where do these properties come from? I'm kind of making up avatar. Avatar isn't on the basic profile schema. The name is, though. So let's take a look at that schema. If we go to the Ceramic Docs, you'll see that we have schemas and we have basic profile. So this is the basic profile. And these are kind of like the global properties that exist. So if you're implementing the schema in another application or implementing the schema, you can kind of trust that, or you can hope to trust that all of these properties will be consistent. You have the name, you have the image, you have the description, emoji, background, etc. There's even a property for, I think, yeah, so image is the property that you could basically use instead of avatar. I actually was playing around with this and had some trouble based on the regular expression that they're asking you to use for an image. So basically they want you to use an IPFS hash or an IPFS URL that matches this. And yeah, I just thought it was a little too constraining. So I decided just to create my own avatar. And this way, you know, you can basically just pass in any HTTP endpoint with an image and it works. So that's what we're going to be using. So we have the avatar as the image. And then once we're just going to go ahead and wait for that to be successful. And then we're going to go ahead and log out just a message. So we're going to say, okay, console.log, profile updated. This user has now updated their profile. And then maybe what we'll do is we'll refresh the screen and then fetch that user's profile again. So now let's go ahead and create our form so the user can go ahead and update their profile. So we need basically two form elements, form inputs. The first is going to be for the user's name. And then for the on-change handler, we're just going to call setName, passing in the event.target.value. So as the user types, we'll update their name. The next thing we want to update is the profile image, which is their avatar. And all we want to do is just allow someone to paste in like an endpoint for any image that's hosted anywhere on the web. And then we'll have a button that says set profile that will call the update profile function. And then the last thing we might want to do is like render out some UI for the name and the image. So what we might first do is just have like an H3 that shows the name if the name exists. So we'll say if the name exists, then we'll show an H3 with the name. And then the same thing with the image. If the image exists, we'll go ahead and show the image with the width of 400 pixels. And then finally, we'll have some really, really basic, somewhat ugly fallback for someone that doesn't have a profile. So we'll say if there is no image and there's no name and it's loaded, then we're going to tell them, hey, go ahead and create a profile because you don't have one. I think that's it. So let's go ahead and start or restart the app and give this a shot. So if I call read profile, then we see no profile, please create one. And I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit because we're pretty far out. So what I want to do is I want to set the profile. So let's go ahead and first set our name. And then we're going to set our profile image. And I'll go ahead and grab my penguin and put him here. We see that our image is showing up. And that's great. So let's go ahead and set our profile. We see that 3ID Connect is asking us to either connect to an existing ID or create a new ID. I don't have an ID, so I'm going to go ahead and create a new ID. This is going to sign the request. We'll sign the request to link our identity to this account. All right, and now that the update is completed, we should see logged out to the console, profile updated. So what we can now do is test this out again. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh, and I'm going to click read profile. And now our profile is coming back. We see our avatar, we see our name, and let's say I want to update my profile to be Natter. I can go ahead and set profile. And it looks like our profile is updated. And we refresh and we click read profile. We see that our profile is coming back as Natter, and everything's been updated. So yeah, that is it. I tried to make this as short and concise as possible, and I'm still learning this stuff, so I probably didn't explain everything perfectly, but I understood it to the best of my knowledge, and I'm really interested in this project, this combination of technologies in particular, because it is decentralized, it is fairly easy to use. The developer experience is pretty nice, and it offers a true, I would say, self-sovereign way for people to deal with their own identity that is accessible publicly to any application that wants to use it based on an address. So yeah, that's it for this video. Thanks for checking it out. If you like this video, please subscribe and like my channel, and share everything that you like with people in your network if you think that they also might be interested in it. And that's it. So I hope you have a great rest of your day, and looking forward to seeing you next time.